Welcome back to the Attack on Titan comparison series. Today we'll cover episode 87, which covers the majority of chapters 123 as well as chapter 130. This will be the final episode of the final season, part 2. At least until that final part of that finale finally comes out next year, but before that finally happens, let's finish this series with style and get right into the comparison. Instead of starting on chapter 130 where we left off last time, we'll be rewinding to chapter 123 where the beginning portion of the chapter was left unadapted. Let me explain. See, the part where Mikasa starts reminiscing about her time in Marley with Eren would normally play right after Eren initiated the rumbling, but this time it's happening much later on as Mikasa is on her way to stop Eren. Placement-wise, this was probably the right call, as it would have cut episode 80 short from showing the entirety of the rumbling in that episode. I technically did cover this chapter already, but I skipped over this part for spoiler reasons, so now we get to start from the beginning as Mikasa is wondering if Eren ever changed. In addition to this new frame-blended shot of Eren running, our crew finally gets a colorized view of Marley's foreign shores. Compared to inside the walls and the internment zone, the color palette of this place really pops, even if there are some graphical glitches here and there. Also, you might have noticed that for the next couple of minutes or so, credits will be rolling out intermittently, as there's no opening or ending song in this episode. Heck, there isn't even a post-credit review, meaning that this episode has a few more minutes than usual to squeeze some manga material in. And that material more or less starts with our crew getting ready to disembark for their next scouting mission. Though we don't actually watch them truly disembark this time, this is instead replaced with some establishing shots and B-roll of daily Marleyan activity. It's no surprise that these foreign sights would surprise our wall-dwelling friends here. The Middle Eastern music and mid-1900s attire is quite the shell shock even for the most hardcore of Titan-killing veterans. And right after travel guide Oniokopon appears and takes off his fedora, we actually get some inserted new lines from him saying that this is Marley's biggest port. New information that some of our friends weren't listening to as they watch a car stroll past him. They were so bamboozled by this car that instead of just watching it like in the manga, they actually chased the car down to try to feed it carrots. While some of our friends are just as carefree as ever, some people aren't. Mainly Eren, who's processing in his head what to make of everything. Despite seeing a lot of Marley through his dad, he almost seems disappointed that this place wasn't as evil as he was hoping. These are the sort of things that Mikasa probably wished she noticed earlier and even said as much in the manga. But these lines from her don't actually come up right now in the anime. They actually come up a little later on this time. Don't worry, I'll mention when it happens. Right after an anime exclusive shot of the pickpocket stealing some money, we continue right along with our crew's fascinations. In the manga, John even offers some ice cream to Armin, he's so stunned, as a far more fishy offer comes Levi's way. I love the faces Levi makes here, it cracks me up every time I see it. This clown has no idea what beehive he just disturbed. From there, Connie and Sasha head off to look for more food, and this time we actually get the representation of the pickpocket following them to their next stall, all while Mikasa is getting in on the ice cream train herself. And it's after Eren talks about his ice cream memories through his dad that the credits finally come to a stop and we get the wide shot of the port. And that shot isn't nearly as wide as the manga's one, as we can no longer see John, Connie, Sasha, nor the pickpocket that is eyeballing them, but we still do get to see Armin getting his ice cream. Oh, and it's after this shot that Mikasa's previously vacant line about not realizing Eren's behavior actually plays out. It's also about now that the pickpocket finally makes his move off screen and Levi catches him red-handed. Besides some character repositioning, there really isn't much to mention in this scene besides some new reactions from Eren, Mikasa, and Armin. Hell, I'd be shocked too to suddenly see such an ugly side to an otherwise peaceful community. Honestly, it makes our guys look like saints. It's incredible how good-natured they are. They ran all the way to the forest just for some random kid, and based on the wide shot of the shoreline, that's a lot of running. It's unclear if this area they arrived in is where they normally ended up, as the ruins here don't exist in the manga, but either way it must have been quite the haul because they're all out of breath regardless. All except for Levi, of course, who somehow managed to get pickpocketed himself. This kid's got some mad skills if he can do that to the likes of Levi. Now with the Azumabito estate, there aren't many changes to mention here either, besides some more character repositioning. The only two things worth mentioning is that there are no longer spectators in the background during their meeting, and for the establishing shot, new guards have been stationed up front. So after Eren wanders off, we move into the scene of Mikasa discovering him at the top of the hill looking at the refugee camp. Except in the manga, they're not actually on top of a hill, they're actually on ground level. It seems like beforehand we got an anime-only depiction of the pickpocket kid running away from Eren, showing that Eren had some time with this kid before Mikasa arrived. This is likely the event that caused Eren to start crying in the first place, as he probably realized he'll have to start killing some really kind people in the future if he wants to accomplish his goal. That is, if they don't just magically disappear like they do in the following cut. These folks were dealt a similar hand in life, and because of that, their freedom was taken away from them, something that we know Eren can't stand for. This is the segue that leads Eren to question Mikasa's freedom, wondering why an Ackerman such as herself has grown so attached to him in the first place. Eren basically gave her two choices. Was it because he saved her as a kid, or was it because they're family? A question that clearly caught Mikasa off guard, and may or may not have an impact on Eren's future decisions. I won't dig into this too much, but I will say it's interesting that Mappa decided to quickly zoom in on Eren as he says the word family. Very interesting. After Mikasa gives her answer, this is when the moment is interrupted by this kind man from the camp as he offers them some refreshments, and the search party finally catches up with us. And after one vacant manga panel of all of them walking to the tent, we watch them gather in a circle as Eren breaks the ice by taking the first swig, effectively starting the party to end all parties. While the party itself is only about a page in the manga, Mappa extended this part well, and even added a nice little remix of a classic Attack on Titan BGM. The only real change in this part is that Eren seems to get a little more hammered this time. This might just be the last time this gang has ever had such a good time with each other, and even a show like Attack on Titan needs moments like this. Moments that leave a smile on your face, especially because things will start to get pretty bleak after this. Now in the next scene, we finally discover how the speech for the subject of Ymir refugees reached a dead end for our crew, and this was the final nail in the coffin for Eren. He was likely giving his friends the benefit of the doubt up to this point, but after this final dead end, there was no more turning back for him. The prospect of a peaceful resolution is something he gave up on a long time ago, and Mikasa would soon come to realize this as we roll through the events that came as a consequence of Eren leaving. As Mikasa wonders if there could have been any other choice, we gradually start to close out our coverage of this chapter. Because in the manga, the panels would start to shift back into the current day, and as we already discussed, the current day is completely different in the manga. So instead of continuing on with what we already know, page 29 will end our coverage of chapter 123, and we'll move right along into chapter 130 after the public disclosure cutscreen airs. And not to cause more confusion, but we won't be starting chapter 130 at the beginning, because the post-credits in the last episode covered the first 4 pages of this chapter. As such, we'll start up on page 5, as the paneling starts to take on a more collage-like format. This format is very non-linear, and more or less the anime keeps that same energy by mixing clips around in a similar but not exact fashion. It's very disjointed in its presentation, and there are a lot of added scene replays that may not technically show up in the manga, but still fit the tone pretty well. I won't mention all the scene replays that played out here, but I will mention one cut that particularly stood out to me. This empty pig pen here is a nice little addition because it plays off the cut/panel earlier of all the pigs fully accounted for, symbolizing those that would eventually acquire their freedom. A nice little touch, as this pretty much fully conceptualizes Eren's mindset at this point. There might be a handful of small panels that didn't quite make it in. It's kinda hard to tell because of how small they are, but there are a few bigger ones worth mentioning of Eren kissing Historia's hand again. But let's be honest, Mappa had the right idea here. We didn't need to see this scene again. After that mishmash of scene replays is when we start getting into scenes that we've actually never seen before, as Eren speaks with Yelena, Floch, Zeke, and Historia. These scenes are also juggled around pretty frequently, but more or less they have a rhythm to them that isn't really broken by the anime. Besides some slight expression changes and different angles, most of the changes here are very surface level, like how Zeke throws a baseball at the wall before joining Eren on the left of the wall and not the right. You know, things like that. But I will say at this part there are a couple of cut lines from Zeke clarifying Eren's reservations about why Mikasa loves him so much. As for the scene of Eren crippling himself, his leg being lopped off is equally hard to look at, but when he takes out his eye, the anime instead decides to cut to black here. Probably for censorship reasons, but it also makes a great cutaway into the next scene. And eventually we'll reach the last cut end panel of this sequence, showing Eren's idea of what a happy life for his friends would look like. In the same way these light leaks bring us back into reality, it's really cool how Isayama dissolves the black background into the current day scene with the bird flying over the worldwide fleet. We're in the endgame now, and as such, we'll be getting a lot of 2-page illustrations like this one all throughout the rest of this chapter. After the narration from this Marleyan ship guy, there's very little if any dialogue, which means the rest of this comparison will mainly come down to added visuals here and there. And to start with that, while this guy is talking about how every big gun from around the world has made its way here, we now get shots showing the mixed races of other fleets as well. We can see a variety of different faces in uniforms, and there's even one that looks like he belongs to the Mid-Eastern Allied forces, the people that the Marleyans were fighting at the beginning of the final season. Like this guy said, it really is a miracle that this fleet even came together in the first place, but when facing a worldwide disaster, I suppose anything is possible. And as that world-ending disaster draws closer and closer, the signal is finally given to let every cannon rip into Titan-infested waters. The amount of close-up angles the anime gives us when this happens is staggering. I counted a total of 13 different cuts in this 7-second time frame, with a total of 24 turrets being fired. Of course, the real number is far higher than that, as we can see as much when they fly in the air. I really like how Mappa did this cut, following the cannons as they asynchronously fly away from the ships in bands until they all start stalling midair to come crashing down. And it's not just for show too, these cannons really mess up some of these Titans, which is crazy to think knowing just how much trouble one of these things can be. Really in the anime, we see a lot more Titans get split apart, as these things are rarely shown with injuries in the manga. All I could find was just one Titan with a missing arm. Maybe all that extra damage they did in the anime caused the fleet to let up a little bit, because this time they actually stopped firing for a bit while they assessed the situation. Not the right call, as we can start to see Titans swimming past the bodies of their brothers and sisters. It's only then that they start firing again, but that's not going to do them any good, as the steam draws closer and closer until it engulfs them when the Titans swim underneath. While it might be a little harder to tell that the steam vaporized them in the manga, there really is no room for dispute in the anime, as you can watch their skin getting flayed off frame by frame. Not a good way to go. It's then that we get some anime-only depictions of the ships being flung up into the air from the steam before falling down in an explosive manner. From this wide shot, it almost looks like a fireworks show with all the point lights in the background. Quite the show for all the foot soldiers who are likely writing their wills in their heads right now. I'm pretty sure they're all aware that they're completely boned at this point. Nonetheless, they give it a shot anyways as the Titans start to stand up on the seabed. And no surprise, these cannons do absolutely nothing. It really doesn't take long for these soldiers to realize there's no point in trying as they all start heading up ground. I don't really blame them, the area's likely already been evacuated, so there's nothing really keeping them. And this is right as Eren emerges from the smoke and we get our first real good look at his completed form. And what a form it is. He kind of reminds me of a low-hanging rotten fruit with elf ears. This is the culmination of a bad childhood experience gone wrong, and now the rest of the world has to reap the consequences. This is what we're left with at the end. Shots of the rumbling overhead making its way through the continent, leaving nothing but steam and wastelands in its wake. And it'll be that way for the next year until the final season comes out. After this final illustration here, the last thing we see is a Titan stomping down on us just like in the opening, and the to be continued cut screen. And well, that basically brings a close to this series for the time being. This series has been a really interesting project to tackle compared to the Demon Slayer series, and I wouldn't mind covering past episodes, but what do you guys want? Let me know in the comments down below. I try to read as many comments as I can, and I'm sincerely looking forward to everyone's input. Besides commenting though, if you really enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and share it with a friend. And hey, maybe also subscribe for more comparison content. Well, that's it for me. As always, I hope you all have a fantastic day. This is Registry, signing off.